Well, let's look at this overview of Chapter 2. And actually, Chapter 2 is very important. We don't want you to get lost in a lot of the technicalities and so forth of the small things we do, the small tasks, so that you don't see the big picture. And so we'll try to show that big picture quite often. So what is that big picture? Well, that what we're going to do is given a basically a claim, we can think of it that way. So given a claim, we will simulate the claim and see if we get the data that are presented. Okay, that's pretty much the idea. So think about it. You know, somebody makes a claim, and you know, let's take something that's maybe not so statistical in approach, but you know, somebody, you know, say I claim I can you know, move rocks with my mind. Now, in this case, we probably wouldn't do a simulation. You'd probably just ask me to show you, right? You know, so you know, what would you do? You'd say, you know, show me. Okay, and this is where we would get our situation and of sort of a simulation, because if I can say I can do it, well, then I ought to be able to do it. And you know, so what would probably happen, right, is I would try many times. And fail. So our little simulation, you know, where we check this claim, right, we could never reproduce the claims data, right? Okay, never reproduce the claim in this case. So we wouldn't believe it, right? So we would reject the claim. Now, it's going to be a little bit different for us in a way, in that actually our claim often we do want to reject, but we'll kind of start with some ideas that are a little more like the case I just mentioned with trying to move things with my mind. And so you know, that's our overview. You know, that's the big picture, really, is again, you know, just given a claim, can we assume the claim and again, we'll see. We have to be a little careful about what we mean by a claim and so forth. But you know, it really comes down to this: is given a claim, can we assume the claim and reproduce the data? Okay, that's the big question. That's the whole course, and that's why chapter 2 is really very important. And so we don't want to get lost on that big idea. Is pretty much every time we look at this, this is what it's coming down to: is given a claim, can we assume the claim and reproduce the data that the claim would have? Okay, now, you know, what happens then in chapter 2 is we start with brute force. Okay, and this is the simulation approach. This is the idea of a simulation. Okay, so we start with brute force, but then we see that a mathematical model called the normal distribution Okay, so we see that this mathematical model called the normal distribution saves us work. That's always good. Math does tend to do that for us. It tends to save us a lot of work. Never feels that way while we're doing the mathematics, because that seems like a lot of work. But in the end, that's the whole idea of a lot of mathematical models and so forth, is they save us a lot of work. Okay, so that's where you can lose sight of this bigger picture. Is just that every time with most of what we do in this course, we're given a claim. We want to assume that claim and try to reproduce the data that would go with that claim. But then what we see is, well, this brute force thing is kind of a pain and can get very complicated very quickly. And so actually life is just much better if we can use this thing called the normal distribution. All right, so that's our overview from Chapter 2.